Strange tales, yet mirrors of human life. Hey everyone! Welcome to Encountering Chinese, Strange Tales from Zhai. Today, I'm going to bring you a story called Unjust Imprisonment. In Yanggu County, there lived a man named Zhu, a young man known for his frivolous nature and love of making jokes. After his wife passed away, Zhu felt lonely at home and decided to seek the help of a matchmaker to arrange a new marriage. On his way to meet her, Zhu happened to see the woman of the matchmaker's neighbor. Struck by her youth and beauty, he joked with the matchmaker, saying, "I just saw your neighbor, what a stunning beauty. If you're going to match me with someone, she'd be the perfect choice." The matchmaker, half joking herself, replied with a laugh, "Well, you'd have to take care of her husband first, then I might be able to help you." Zhu laughed heartily and said, "All right, I'll go prepare for that." Who would have guessed that just over a month later, the husband of the matchmaker's neighbor went out to collect a debt and was shockingly found murdered in the wilderness. The county magistrate ordered the arrest of all the man's neighbors and subjected them to brutal interrogations. Despite being beaten to the brink of death, none of them could provide any useful information. Eventually, the matchmaker mentioned the joke she had exchanged with Zhu that day. The magistrate then turned his attention to Zhu and had him arrested. When questioned, Zhu naturally denied the charges. The magistrate, however, suspected that the widow and Zhu were having an affair and interrogated her as well. After enduring countless forms of torture, the woman could no longer bear the pain and confessed falsely. The magistrate then resumed questioning Zhu, who protested. "She is a helpless woman, how could she withstand such torment? Everything she's confessed is false. Now, she is suffering great injustice and is being branded as unchaste, which I cannot bear to see. If that's the case, then I'll confess, it was me who killed her husband. She knew nothing about it. I was captivated by her beauty and plotted to murder her husband. I am guilty." The magistrate, skeptical, asked, "If what you say is true, do you have any evidence?" Zhu lowered his head and thought for a moment before replying, "I have a blood-stained garment as proof." Immediately, the magistrate sent men to search Zhu's house, but they found nothing. Zhu endured another round of severe beatings before finally saying, "My mother, out of love for me, refuses to hand over the garment, knowing it would seal my fate. If you escort me home, I will retrieve it myself." The magistrate agreed and had Zhu escorted home. Upon seeing his mother, Zhu sighed and said, "Mother, if you give me the blood-stained garment, I will be sentenced to death. If you don't, I will still die. Since the result is the same, why delay the inevitable?" His mother wept so bitterly that she could barely stand. Covering her face, she staggered into the house and, after a long while, returned with trembling hands, holding the blood-stained garment, which she gave to Zhu. The magistrate examined the garment and found it indeed stained with blood. He sentenced Zhu to execution by beheading. The case underwent several reviews, but Zhu remained unwavering in his testimony, resolutely insisting on the truth of his earlier confession, determined to face death. A year passed in the blink of an eye, and the day of execution drew closer. One day, the county magistrate was in court reviewing the crimes of the prisoners when suddenly, a man burst into the courtroom and angrily shouted, "You incompetent fool! How dare you govern the people of this land?" The bailiffs rushed forward to seize him, but with a wave of his hand, the man sent them all inexplicably tumbling to the ground. The magistrate turned pale with fright and attempted to flee, but the man bellowed in a commanding voice, "I am General Zhou, a subordinate of Guan Yu. Take one more step, and I will kill you on the spot." The magistrate's legs buckled beneath him, and he collapsed to his knees, trembling. The man continued, "The true murderer is the scoundrel Gong Biao. Zhu has nothing to do with this case." As soon as the words were spoken, the man suddenly collapsed to the ground, appearing lifeless. Moments later, he slowly opened his eyes, his face as pale as death. The bailiffs quickly bound him tightly and interrogated him. To everyone's astonishment, the man was none other than Gong Biao. When the magistrate pressed Gong Biao further, he confessed to the murder. It turned out that Gong Biao, a notorious idler who had committed various unlawful acts, heard that the matchmaker's neighbor was returning from a debt collection trip. Suspecting the man would be carrying a large sum of money, Gong Biao ambushed and killed him. To his dismay, after searching the corpse, he found nothing of value. When Gong Biao later learned that Zhu had been wrongly accused, he was secretly pleased. However, he had no memory of how he had ended up in the courtroom that day. The magistrate then questioned Zhu about the blood-stained garment, but Zhu confessed that he, too, had no idea of its origin. The magistrate summoned Zhu's mother for questioning, and the elderly woman tearfully revealed the truth. On the day she handed over the garment, she had deliberately slashed her own arm with a knife and used the blood to stain the cloth. The magistrate inspected Zhu's mother's left arm and found the knife wound, still unhealed and bearing scars. Stunned, the magistrate could only gape in disbelief. The case eventually reached higher authorities and caused a great uproar. The magistrate was dismissed from his post and fined a hefty sum of silver to atone for his negligence. Consumed with regret, he fell ill and died while in custody. Over a year later, the murdered man's mother suggested her widowed daughter-in-law remarry. Out of gratitude for Zhu's sacrifice, the woman ultimately chose to marry him. At the end of the story, the author added this commentary. Administering justice is the foremost duty of any official. A fair verdict brings virtue and merit to the judge, while a wrongful judgment is an unforgivable act of cruelty. The outcome rests entirely on how the case is handled, and officials must never treat such matters carelessly. An impatient, corrupt, or tyrannical official is clearly acting against the will of heaven. However, one who delays, neglects duties, or handles cases indifferently is equally capable of causing great harm. One plaintiff filing a complaint may disrupt the farming of several households. A single trial might bankrupt a dozen families. Thus, even seemingly trivial cases must not be dismissed as insignificant. I have often advised officials. If you lack the ability to manage cases properly, do not rashly accept lawsuits. That in itself is a great virtue. For cases of lesser importance, avoid detaining individuals unnecessarily. And when the evidence is clear and irrefutable, do not hesitate or procrastinate in delivering a verdict. Even the uneducated commoners from remote villages, or the quarrelsome folk from mountain hamlets, come to court not to pursue vengeance but merely to seek a fair resolution. Most of these disputes can be settled with a simple judgment. There's no need to summon entire families or villages. Just call the plaintiff and defendant, offer mild rebukes or minor penalties, and the matter will be resolved. Those officials praised for their divine wisdom earned their reputation simply by handling disputes in this straightforward manner. But nowadays, when cases are filed, it's as if they vanish into thin air after the summons is issued. Constables assigned to apprehend suspects will delay their duties if not properly compensated. Clerks who see no opportunity for profit will repeatedly postpone the trial. As a result, cases drag on for months or even years. Some cases remain unaddressed for so long that those involved are left utterly destitute before the trial even begins. Meanwhile, the high-ranking officials comfortably rest in their chambers, blissfully unconcerned. Little do they realize that within the depths of their prisons, countless innocent souls languish in despair, stretching their necks in hope of rescue, yet seeing no salvation in sight. Certainly, those who are cunning and malevolent are hardly deserving of sympathy. However, when innocent, kind-hearted people are dragged into harm's way, how can an official stand idly by? Moreover, among those innocents who are implicated, the honest far outnumber the wicked. The harm suffered by the virtuous is often greater than that endured by the conniving, for the malicious are difficult to oppress, while the meek and upright are easy prey for abuse. When constables hurl insults or deliver beatings, and officials extort or oppress, it is often because the person kneeling before them is an honest and vulnerable individual. Such people become easy targets for those who exploit power for personal gain. The moment a law-abiding citizen steps into the courthouse, it is as though they've plunged into a sea of fire. The sooner their case is resolved, the sooner they can return to peace. Who could bear to watch these emaciated, desperate souls languish in detention, ignored and suffering, all because someone chose to delay proceedings for their selfish desires? Even if such delays do not appear overtly cruel, the resulting harm is no less severe. I once came across a case file in which the primary offenders numbered no more than 3 or 4, while the rest were blameless citizens. These innocent individuals were dragged into the case for reasons as trivial as minor disputes with the plaintiff or defendant, or merely because someone envied their wealth. The true culprits maliciously involved them, using the court to exact personal revenge. Those whose names appeared at the bottom of the lawsuit suffered immensely. Their predicament was like a festering sore infecting their very bones. These innocents endured unthinkable torment within the courthouse walls, sharing the same humiliation as the true criminals. They were forced to kneel alongside actual offenders, like a flock of crows huddled together. Only when others were released could they also gain freedom, as if they were monkeys bound together by the same rope. Throughout the trial, officials ignored them, constables acted as though they didn't exist, and they bore all the suffering alone. For a case that had nothing to do with them, they were compelled to sell their homes, their possessions, even their wives and children. The officials filled their coffers with the spoils of corruption, while the malicious sought revenge. Meanwhile, the kind-hearted bore the brunt of all the suffering. I fervently hope that officials, when they identify a major suspect, would take the time to question others only briefly, releasing those who can be freed and punishing suspects according to the law. A few strokes of their pen could save countless lives and transform the futures of entire families, while also accumulating boundless virtue for themselves. Tragically, most officials seem to have never contemplated this responsibility. They fail to recognize that the pen they wield can often be more terrifying than ropes or blades. All right. That's all for today's tale, Unjust Imprisonment. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Please also encourage everyone to comment and share more. We'll see you in the next episode.